The sound of shattering glass echoed through our marble-floored kitchen as I ducked, the crystal vase missing my head by inches. My hands trembled, but my voice remained steady. "That's the last time you'll ever throw anything at me, Dwayne. I'm Violet, and until that moment, I'd been the perfect society wife everyone expected me to be. Poised, polished, and above all quiet about what happened behind closed doors." "You ungrateful bitch," Dwayne snarled, his perfectly pressed suit wrinkled from his sudden movement. "After everything I've given you?" "Given me?" I touched the fading bruise on my collarbone, hidden beneath my silk blouse. "You mean like this?" His face contorted, that familiar darkness creeping into his eyes. But this time, I didn't flinch. I'd already called the police. They were on their way. "Nobody will believe you," he sneered, stepping closer. "Your own family won't believe you." The doorbell rang, making us both freeze. Through the window, I caught glimpses of red and blue lights. "They already do," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. What followed was a blur of statements and photographs. The officers were professional, documenting everything while Dwayne maintained his composed facade. "My wife is confused," he kept saying. "She's been under a lot of stress lately." My phone buzzed incessantly. Mother, father, their carefully crafted world was already crumbling. "Answer it," Dwayne taunted as the officers led him away. "See what your precious family thinks about this spectacle." I did, later that evening, in my parents' mahogany-lined study. Mother sat rigid in her armchair, while father paced behind his desk. "Retract the charges," Mother said, her voice ice-cold. "We can handle this privately." "Handle it?" I laughed, the sound foreign even to my ears. "Like we handled it when Cousin Sarah's husband broke her arm? Or when—" "Enough!" Father slammed his hand on the desk. "You will not destroy this family's reputation with your accusations. They're not accusations. They're facts. I have proof." Mother's perfectly manicured fingers gripped her armrest. "Darling, every marriage has its difficulties, but we don't air our dirty laundry in public." "This isn't about dirty laundry." I stood up, my legs surprisingly steady. "This is about abuse, about violence, about—" "About you being dramatic," Father cut in. "If you proceed with this, you'll destroy everything we've built, everything we've protected." "Protected?" The word tasted bitter. "You mean everything you've hidden." Mother rose, her silk dress rustling. "You have a choice to make, Violet. Either you drop this nonsense and we'll help you and Dwayne work through your issues, or what? Or you're no longer part of this family." The silence that followed felt endless. I looked at them both, these people who'd raised me, who'd taught me to value appearance above all else, who'd watch me suffer rather than risk their precious reputation. "You know what he did to me," I whispered. "What we know," Father said, straightening his tie, "is that you're being hysterical. Think carefully about your next move, Violet. Once certain doors close, they don't open again." I stood up, smoothing my skirt, a habit Mother had drilled into me since childhood. "Then I guess this is goodbye." "Don't be ridiculous," Mother snapped. "Sit down. We'll discuss this rationally." But I was already walking toward the door. Behind me, Father's voice carried that familiar tone of authority. "If you walk out that door, you're cutting yourself off from everything. Your accounts, your inheritance, your place in this family." I paused at the threshold, my hand on the doorknob. "You know what's funny? I always thought family was supposed to protect each other, not the family name." "Violet," Mother started. "Goodbye, Mother, Father." I stepped through the doorway. "I hope your reputation keeps you warm at night." The heavy door closed behind me with a final click. In the grand foyer, surrounded by generations of family portraits, I allowed myself one last look at the life I was leaving behind. My hand brushed against my collarbone, where Dwayne's last gift still throbbed. Outside, the summer evening was warm, but I shivered. My car, or rather Dwayne's car, sat in the circular driveway. I walked past it. I had nothing but my purse, my phone, and the clothes I wore. But for the first time in years, I could breathe. As I walked down the long driveway, past the manicured gardens and ornate gates, I heard Mother calling from the doorway. I didn't look back. Some doors, once closed, shouldn't be reopened, and some bridges need to burn so you can build something better from their ashes. The women's shelter smelled like industrial cleaner and burnt coffee. I sat on a thin mattress, staring at the few belongings I'd managed to buy with the cash from my emergency fund. A toothbrush, some clothes from Target, basic necessities that felt foreign after years of designer labels. "First night's always the hardest," a voice said from the doorway. A woman about my age leaned against the frame, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. "I'm Marley." "Violet," I replied, forcing a smile. "That obvious, huh?" She sat down on the bed across from mine. "You've got that deer in headlights look we all had at first. Plus, those shoes probably cost more than my car." I looked down at my Jimmy Choos and laughed for the first time in days. "They're not very practical for homelessness, are they?" "Neither is that watch," she pointed to my wrist. "You might want to hide that before someone gets ideas." I slipped the watch off, tucking it into my bag. "Thanks, I'm not very good at this yet." Nobody is at first. Marley pulled up her sleeve, revealing a faded scar. 2 years ago, I was a kindergarten teacher with a husband who liked to use me as a punching bag. Now I counsel other women here. "How did you—" I gestured vaguely at the shelter around us. "Survive? Rebuild? Stop feeling like my whole world had ended?" She smiled. "One day at a time, and lots of help from people who'd been there before." The next few weeks passed in a blur of job applications and counseling sessions. I sold my watch, my shoes, everything of value except my wedding ring. That I threw into the river one night while Marley watched. "Feel better?" she asked as we sat on the riverbank. "I don't know what I feel anymore." I hugged my knees to my chest. "Yesterday I saw my mother at the grocery store. She looked right through me like I was a ghost." "Family can be the worst betrayal," Marley said quietly. "But you know what helps? Turning that pain into purpose." I turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" She pulled out her phone, showing me a news article. "See this? Another woman died last week. Her family knew about the abuse but didn't want to cause a scandal. Sound familiar?" My throat tightened. Too familiar. "You know what these women need? Someone who understands both worlds. The fancy galas where everyone pretends everything's perfect, and the reality of sleeping in a shelter because the alternative might kill you." I sat up straighter. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we do something. Use your connections, my experience. Create something to help women like us, especially the ones trapped in golden cages." The idea took root, growing stronger each day. We spent nights planning over cheap coffee, drawing up proposals, researching grants. One morning, while helping a new arrival settle in, everything clicked. The woman, Sarah, clutched a designer handbag that couldn't hide her black eye. "My family says I'm overreacting," she whispered, "that these things happen in marriage." "Let me guess," I said, sitting beside her. "They care more about their country club membership than your safety?" Her head snapped up. "How did you—" "Because I lived it. But Sarah, you're not alone anymore." That evening, I called the one person from my old life who might still talk to me, my old college roommate, now a successful lawyer. "Violet?" Her voice was cautious. "Are you okay?" "Better than okay, Rachel. I need your help setting up a non-profit. We're going to help women escape domestic violence, especially in high society circles where everyone pretends it doesn't exist." There was a long pause. "Your family will hate this." "They already hate me. Might as well make it count for something." She sighed. Then I heard papers rustling. "Give me an hour to clear my schedule. This needs to be done right." 3 months later, Golden Cage Survivors had its first office, a tiny space above a coffee shop. Marley handled the counseling while I worked my old social connections, carefully building a network of supporters who valued truth over appearances. Our first success story was Sarah. She stood in our office, keys to her new apartment in hand, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought I'd be strong enough," she said. I hugged her tight. "You always were. You just needed someone to remind you." That night, Marley and I celebrated with takeout Chinese food in our shared apartment. You know this is just the beginning, right? She said, raising her paper cup of wine. We're going to change lives. I thought about my mother, my father, Dwayne, all the people who'd tried to keep me quiet. No, I replied, clinking my cup against hers. We're going to change the whole damn system. Ms. Bennett? The voice made me freeze halfway through sorting donation boxes. A man in a well-fitted suit stood in our office doorway, press badge hanging from his neck. I'm David Lowe from the Daily Chronicle. We're closed, I said, turning back to the boxes. Actually, I'm here about your family. He stepped inside, uninvited. Interesting how the Bennetts' charitable donations dropped significantly, right after their daughter disappeared from society events. Marley appeared from the back room, her protective instincts kicking in. Sir, you need to leave. Just a few questions, he persisted, pulling out a notebook. Like why a woman from one of the city's wealthiest families is running a domestic violence nonprofit from above a coffee shop? I straightened up, meeting his eyes. That's not a story worth your time. I disagree. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Especially since your ex-husband just made partner at his law firm. Quite a comeback after those charges were mysteriously dropped. The donation box crumpled under my grip. Get out. The public has a right to know that we helped 38 women escape abuse last month, Marley cut in. That's your story. Take it or leave it. After he left, I slumped against the wall. He's not going away. Then we'll deal with it, Marley said firmly, like we deal with everything else. But dealing with it became complicated when our biggest donor called that afternoon. Violet, darling, Vanessa's voice dripped honey through the phone. I just had the most interesting lunch with Margaret Wellington. My stomach dropped. Margaret was my mother's closest friend. She seems concerned about your organization's reputation. Our reputation is helping women survive, Vanessa. Of course, dear. But perhaps we could be more discreet? Some of these women come from very prominent families. That's exactly why we need to be visible, I argued. The silence is what keeps women trapped. Speaking of visibility, she continued as if I hadn't spoken, the annual charity circuit is approaching. Golden Cage survivors should have a presence. We can't afford, I'll sponsor it. Consider it an investment in our shared future. After hanging up, I found Marley stress-eating donuts in the break room. That reporter's article just went live, she said, turning her phone screen toward me. Society Iris turns family scandal into charitable venture. It's not terrible, I said, scanning the text. At least he included our mission statement. Keep reading. Sources close to the Bennett family suggest the organization may be a calculated move for revenge rather than genuine charitable work. Calculated revenge? I laughed bitterly. They think I chose homelessness and poverty for revenge? The office door chimed. Rachel burst in, legal papers in hand. We have a problem. Your ex-husband's firm is representing 3 families threatening to sue us for interference in private family matters. They can't do that, Marley protested. We follow every legal protocol. They can try, Rachel said grimly. And they have the money to make it stick. I thought of Vanessa's offer. What if we went public? Really public? What do you mean? Rachel asked. A charity gala, full media coverage. Make it impossible for them to shut us down quietly. Marley's eyes widened. That's either brilliant or suicide. Maybe both, I admitted. But we have Vanessa's backing, and if we're loud enough, they can't make us disappear. Rachel tapped her pen against the papers. It would force them to either publicly support abuse or publicly oppose a domestic violence charity. Clever. It's risky, Marley warned. Your family... My family made their choice. I grabbed my coat. I need to see someone first. An hour later, I stood outside David's office at the Chronicle. Come to threaten legal action? He asked without looking up from his computer. Come to offer you an exclusive. That got his attention. But first, we talk about your real motivation for that article. He leaned back in his chair. Meaning? Meaning you didn't stumble onto this story by accident. Someone pointed you our way. I want to know who. You know I can't reveal. Then I'll tell you. Margaret Wellington, right? My mother's friend who's been trying to dig up dirt on me since I left. His silence was answer enough. Here's the deal, I continued. You want a real story? Come to our gala next month. You'll get your headline, but you print the truth, not whatever narrative they're feeding you. And what is the truth, Ms. Bennett? I stood to leave. That some families will sacrifice their daughters to protect their reputation, and some daughters refuse to be sacrificed. At the door, I turned back. Oh, and David? Next time you write about us, remember, we keep detailed records of every threat, every attempt to silence us. That might make an interesting follow-up story. The Grand Plaza Hotel's marble floors still felt familiar under my heels as I followed Vanessa through the lobby. 2 years away hadn't changed the way money smelled, like expensive perfume and privilege. The ballroom can hold 500, Vanessa said, gesturing grandly. I've already secured commitments from most of the major families. Most? I raised an eyebrow. Well, she smoothed her blazer, some are hesitant, given the circumstances. You mean my family threatened them? A server approached with champagne. Vanessa took 2 glasses, handed me one. Actually, darling, they're coming. The champagne caught in my throat. What? Your parents RSVP'd this morning. Your father's firm is buying 2 tables. My hands trembled so badly I had to set the glass down. They're trying to control the narrative. Obviously, Vanessa's perfectly painted lips curved into a smile. The question is, are you ready to control it instead? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Marley's text read, "Emergency, office, now." I found her pacing our small office while Sarah, our former client, sat crying on the couch. They're threatening to take my daughter, Sarah choked out. My ex's lawyer says they have proof I'm unstable. Let me guess, I said. Dwayne's firm? She nodded. They're trying to scare us before the gala, Marley said, hands clenched. Show us what they can do. I knelt in front of Sarah. Listen to me. They don't have anything. You're stable, employed, and your daughter is thriving. This is just intimidation. But his lawyers are about to learn why you don't poke a mama bear. I pulled out my phone, dialing Rachel. Get ready for court. They want to play dirty? Let's show them our files on their star partner's abuse record. After calming Sarah down and setting up an emergency hearing, I found David waiting outside our office. Interesting timing, I said. Here to document their latest attack? Actually, he pulled out his recorder. I'm here about your mother's recent donation to your ex-husband's firm's charitable foundation. $30 million specifically earmarked for family preservation programs. My laugh sounded hollow even to me. Family preservation, is that what we're calling it now? Care to comment? Yes, I met his eyes. Print this. Golden Cage Survivors cordially invites Mrs. Bennett to explain her definition of family preservation at our upcoming gala. We'd love to hear how it relates to her grandson's violent assault charges that were mysteriously dropped last year. His eyebrows shot up. Your brother's son? The same. Funny how that never made the papers, isn't it? Later that night, Marley found me sorting through old photos in our apartment. What's all this? I held up a picture from my wedding day. Evidence. See how I'm wearing long sleeves in June? Hiding bruises? And my mother knew. Look at her face. I pointed to her tight smile. She helped me cover them with makeup that morning. Marley sat beside me. Are you sure you want to do this? Once you expose them? They exposed themselves when they chose their reputation over their daughter's life. I pulled out another photo, a family Christmas party. See this woman? She died last year. Accidental fall down the stairs after threatening to leave her husband. My father's law firm handled the investigation. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of me entering the Grand Plaza, taken that morning. They're watching you, Marley said quietly. Good. I stood up, gathering the photos. Let them watch. Let them worry about which of their precious secrets I'll expose first. Another text came through, this time from Vanessa. Darling, the press list for the gala just grew. Every major network wants coverage. Perfect timing, I murmured. For what? I showed her my phone screen, a video from my wedding day. In it, my mother adjusted my sleeve, revealing dark bruises, while saying clearly, Just get through today, dear. These things happen in good families. Violet, Marley breathed. That's my mother choosing our family's image over her daughter's safety, and in 3 weeks everyone will see it. They'll try to stop you. They already are. I gestured to the threatening letters, the legal notices, the surveillance photos. But here's what they don't understand. I'm not that scared little girl anymore, and every attempt to silence me is just more proof of what we're fighting against. My phone buzzed again. Rachel this time. Sarah's emergency hearing is tomorrow at 9. Dwayne's handling it personally. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Tell Sarah not to worry. Her daughter's staying right where she belongs, with her protective mother, not her abusive father's lawyers. And if they fight dirty, then they better pray I don't decide to fight dirtier. I've got 2 years of receipts, and I'm done being quiet. The courthouse steps were already crowded when I arrived for Sarah's hearing. Dwayne stood at the top, surrounded by junior associates, looking exactly as I remembered. Perfectly pressed suit, carefully styled hair, and that practiced smile that had fooled so many people. Well, if it isn't my ex-wife, he called out, loud enough for nearby reporters to hear. Still playing social justice warrior? I kept walking, Sarah close behind me. Still beating women, Dwayne? His smile tightened. Careful, Violet. Defamation is a serious charge. So is perjury. I patted my briefcase. Want to see what I found in those sealed records you thought were destroyed? The color drained from his face as Rachel appeared beside us, carrying her own stack of files. Your Honor, Dwayne started once we were inside. We have serious concerns about the mother's stability, given her association with certain radical organizations. Objection, Rachel stood. Counsel is attempting to deflect from the real issue by attacking a legitimate nonprofit organization. Sustained, the judge peered over her glasses. Mr. Knight, stick to relevant facts. Very well. Dwayne straightened his tie. We have evidence that Ms. Sarah has been coaching her daughter to make false allegations. Your Honor, I stood up, ignoring Rachel's warning look. Permission to approach? The judge nodded. I handed her a sealed envelope. These are police reports from Mr. Knight's previous cases, including photographic evidence that was misplaced during filing. You'll notice the signature of the officer who helped bury them matches the signature on Sarah's daughter's recent interview. The judge's eyes narrowed as she reviewed the documents. Mr. Knight, approach. Their whispered conversation ended with Dwayne's face turning an interesting shade of purple. 10 minutes later, Sarah had full custody, and Dwayne was being questioned by the State Bar Association. Outside, reporters swarmed us. Ms. Bennett, is it true your organization targeted your ex-husband's firm? No comment. Rachel tried to shuffle us through. Actually, I turned to the cameras. I do have a comment. To any woman watching who's being told to stay quiet, to any family choosing reputation over safety, we see you, and we're not staying silent anymore. Back at the office, Marley was arguing with Vanessa. We can't seat them at the front, Marley insisted. It's a security risk. They're her parents, Vanessa countered. It would look strange. They're not my parents anymore, I interrupted. They're just another example of the problem we're fighting. My phone rang, Mother's private number. After 2 years of silence, she was calling now. Hello, Mother. Violet. Her voice was tight. This has gone far enough. Has it? Because from where I'm standing, it's just beginning. Your father is very upset about today's display. I laughed. Today's display? You mean exposing how his firm helps abusers keep custody of their children? You're destroying everything we built. No, Mother. I'm exposing everything you buried. There's a difference. We're coming to your little event, she said coldly. To show unity as a family. You will not embarrass us. Watch me. After hanging up, I found Marley and Vanessa staring at me. They're planning something, Marley warned. Of course they are. I pulled out the wedding video. That's why we're planning something bigger. Vanessa studied me carefully. The video would destroy them. They destroyed themselves when they chose their reputation over their daughter's life. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Your brother just posted bail. Assault charges dropped again. Want to comment? Perfect timing, I muttered, typing back. Save it for the gala. I'll give you something better. That evening, I visited Sarah and her daughter at their new apartment. Thank you, Sarah hugged me tight. I never thought I'd be free. You freed yourself, I corrected her. We just helped with the logistics. Her daughter Emma tugged at my sleeve. Are you really a princess? What? Daddy said you were, but you gave it all up to help people like Mommy. I knelt down to her level. No, sweetie. I'm just someone who learned that being safe is more important than being rich. Later, walking home, I got another text, from my father this time. Whatever you're planning, remember, every action has consequences. I took a screenshot and sent it to David with the caption, "Add this to the file. They're not even trying to hide the threats anymore." His response came quickly. Front page is yours if you want it. Just say when. I looked up at the night sky, thinking of all the women still trapped in their golden cages, of all the families choosing silence over safety. Soon, I typed back. Very soon. They're pulling our permits, Marley slammed her laptop shut. The hotel claims there are security concerns about tomorrow's gala. I was already dialing Vanessa. She answered on the first ring. Handling it now, darling. They seem to have forgotten who sits on their board. 20 minutes later, she called back. Fixed. Though your father's fingerprints are all over this attempt. Of course they are. I checked my phone. Another anonymous threat, this time with photos of me entering my apartment. They're getting desperate. David burst into our office, waving a file. You need to see this. Your brother's victim? She's willing to talk. My heart stopped. Amanda? She saw the article about the gala, says she's tired of being scared. I remembered Amanda, 17, bruised and terrified when she came to us 6 months ago. My nephew had done a number on her, but my father's legal team had done worse. Get her somewhere safe, I ordered. They'll try to silence her before tomorrow. Already done, David smiled. She's with Rachel recording her statement. My phone buzzed. Mother again. Violet, we need to talk. Now. The Riverside Cafe, I said. 1 hour, bring your checkbook. You're buying. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Mother sat primly at a corner table, looking exactly as I remembered. Perfectly coiffed, designer everything, face frozen in perpetual disappointment. You're late, she said as I sat down. You're desperate, I countered. What's wrong? Worried about what Amanda might say? Her teacup clinked against its saucer. That girl is troubled. Nobody will believe her. Like nobody would believe me? That was different. Was it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly the same. Another rich boy, another beaten girl, another cover-up. We protected you, she hissed. We gave you everything. You gave me bruises and silence. I pulled out my phone, showing her the wedding video. Want to explain this to the cameras tomorrow? Her face went white. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Your father will... What? Cut me off? Threaten me? Been there? Done that. I stood up. You know what's funny, Mother? I'm not afraid anymore. And that terrifies you. Back at the office, Marley was coordinating security for tomorrow. The guest list is insane. Every major news outlet, half the city's elite. And every survivor brave enough to stand with us, I added, checking the RSVPs. How many? 200 and counting. They're calling it the Golden Cage Uprising on social media. My phone lit up with a text from Rachel. Amanda's statement is recorded. It's devastating. Your father's firm is already trying to block its release. Too late, I muttered, forwarding it to David. The office door chimed. Vanessa swept in, looking worried. Darling, there's been a development. Your brother was just admitted to rehab. They're claiming temporary insanity for all his... incidents. Of course they are, I laughed bitterly. Can't have him coherent when Amanda speaks tomorrow. There's more. She handed me a tablet. They're announcing a $100 million domestic violence prevention initiative through your father's foundation. Trying to steal our thunder? Marley scoffed. No, I said slowly. They're trying to control the narrative. Make it look like they were always on the right side. My phone buzzed again. Dwayne this time. Last chance to back down. Think about what you're risking. I showed Marley the message. They still think I have something to lose. Don't you? No. I pulled out the stack of photos I'd been collecting, evidence of years of abuse, cover-ups, and threats. But they do. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window, watching the city lights, when David called. "The story's ready," he said. "Front page, Sunday edition, The Golden Cage, How Society's Elite Hide Domestic Violence." "Hold it," I said. "Wait until after tomorrow night. Let them think they still have control." "You sure about this? Once it starts?" "I'm sure." I touched my collarbone, where the last of Dwayne's bruises had finally faded. They had their chance to do the right thing. Now they get to face the consequences. A final text came through, from my father. "Whatever you think you're going to accomplish tomorrow, remember who you're dealing with." I smiled, thinking of Amanda's testimony, the wedding video, the hundreds of survivors ready to speak out, and every piece of evidence we'd gathered over 2 years. "Oh, I remember exactly who I'm dealing with," I whispered to the empty room. "And tomorrow, so will everyone else." The Grand Plaza's ballroom glittered with chandeliers and camera flashes. I stood backstage, watching through a gap in the curtains as my parents worked the room, all perfect smiles and practiced charm. "Ready?" Marley appeared beside me, tablet in hand. "First video is queued up. How many cameras?" "Every major network, plus live streams. We're trending already." My father caught my eye across the room, raising his champagne glass in what looked like a toast but felt like a warning. Mother sat at their table, back rigid, smile frozen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vanessa took the stage, resplendent in designer gold. "Welcome to Golden Cage Survivor's first annual gala." The applause felt electric. I smoothed my dress, not designer this time, but chosen carefully, long-sleeved, like my wedding dress, but with the sleeves rolled up, showing my bare arms. No more hiding. "And now," Vanessa continued, "please welcome our founder, Violet." The lights felt hot as I stepped onto the stage. 2 years ago, I stood in this very hotel, covering bruises with makeup while my family watched. Tonight, I'm done covering anything. The screens behind me flickered to life with the wedding video. Mother's voice rang clear. "These things happen in good families." The audience gasped. I saw my father half rise from his chair. "But that's not where this story ends," I continued, "because it's not just my story." Sarah stood up from her table, then another survivor, and another. Soon, hundreds were standing. "Each person standing represents a life your silence nearly cost," I said directly to my parents. "Each represents a truth you tried to bury." The screens changed to police reports, hospital records, buried evidence, all with familiar names, all with suspicious dismissals. "Your son's victim couldn't be here tonight," I said as Amanda's photo appeared on screen. "But she recorded this yesterday." Amanda's voice filled the room. "They offered me money to stay quiet, said nobody would believe me anyway. That's when I called Golden Cage Survivors." My father was on his phone now, probably calling lawyers. Mother sat perfectly still, face ashen. "And now," I gestured to the back doors, "please welcome our special guests." David led in a group of people I knew my parents recognized. Former maids, drivers, security staff, all the witnesses they'd paid off over the years. "Turns out," I smiled, "loyalty has a shelf life, especially when you treat people like disposable secrets." The first former maid stepped forward. "I saw what they did to her, what they covered up, not just for her, but for others." My father stood up. "This is slander." "No, father, this is truth. Something you forgot existed." The screens shifted again. Financial records, showing hush money payments, suspicious donations, all traced back to my father's firm. "Your $100 million domestic violence initiative?" I laughed. "Funded by decades of silencing victims. How fitting." Cameras swung between me and my parents as reporters scribbled frantically. "But here's what you never understood," I continued. "Every time you silenced someone, you created evidence. Every threat, every cover-up, every donation to make problems disappear. We documented it all." Mother finally spoke, her voice carrying in the stunned silence. "You're destroying this family." "No, Mother. You destroyed it the first time you chose reputation over your daughter's safety. I'm just making sure you can't do it to anyone else." The screens showed one final image. My brother's mugshot beside Amanda's hospital photos. Your son enters rehab claiming temporary insanity, I addressed my father. But these records show you knew. For years, you knew what he was doing, what you were hiding. Security moved toward my father as he started toward the stage, but he stopped short when David stood up, press badge gleaming. Everything you're seeing tonight, I announced, will be in tomorrow's paper. Every record, every testimony, every cover-up. The truth you tried so hard to bury is finally coming to light. Marley joined me on stage with Sarah and other survivors. Golden Cage Survivors isn't just a charity, it's a movement, and we're done being silent. The applause was deafening. Through tears, I watched my parents hurry toward the exit, followed by a swarm of reporters. You did it, Marley whispered. We did it, I corrected, looking at the hundreds of standing survivors. All of us. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Mother. I hope you're happy with what you've done. I looked out at the room full of survivors, advocates, and truth-tellers. At David already writing tomorrow's headline. At Marley hugging Sarah, both crying and laughing. Actually, I said to the empty air where my parents had been, for the first time in my life, I am. The morning sun streamed through our new office windows, a whole floor now, not just a room above a coffee shop. I watched volunteers setting up for today's support group as my phone buzzed with news alerts. Your father's firm just lost another major client, Marley announced, dropping a stack of papers on my desk. That's 15 since the gala. And my brother? Plea deal. He's actually serving time thanks to Amanda's testimony. The elevator dinged. Sarah walked in, leading a nervous-looking woman in expensive clothes and oversized sunglasses. This is Patricia, Sarah said softly. She saw the news coverage. I recognized her immediately, the governor's daughter-in-law, the bruises under her. Welcome to Golden Cage Survivors, I said, gesturing to a chair. You're safe here. My family says I'm overreacting, she whispered, that I need to think about the upcoming. Family said the same thing. I rolled up my sleeve, showing old scars. Know what I learned? Family isn't about protecting victims, it's about protecting. The door opened again, David carrying today's paper. The headline read, Golden Cage Effect, Domestic Violence Reports Triple Among Elite Families. Your mother's women's charity board just voted her out, he said, grinning. Apparently, they don't appreciate being associated with abuse enablers. How tragic, I deadpanned. I'm sure she'll survive the shame. Patricia removed her sunglasses, revealing a darkening eye. Will you help me file charges? Better. Marley pulled out her phone. We'll help you tell your story, on your terms. The afternoon support group filled our largest conference room. Women from every social circle sat together, sharing stories they'd kept hidden for years. I never thought I'd speak about this, one woman said, but seeing you all at the gala, standing up, it gave me courage. Rachel burst in, legal files in hand. The State Bar Association just announced an investigation into law firms specializing in domestic dispute suppression. Your father's firm is first on the list. My phone lit up, Mother's number. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Instead, I answered on speaker. What do you want, Mother? I've been thinking. Her voice sounded different, older maybe. About what you said at the gala, about choosing reputation over safety. And I was wrong. The words came out rushed. I've been wrong for a very long time. I shared a look with Marley. Why are you telling me this now? Because I found your old diaries, the ones where you wrote about everything. I've been reading them, and She took a shaky breath. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'd like to make a statement about what I saw, what I helped hide. The room had gone silent, everyone listening. You understand this would implicate you? Father? The whole family? Yes. Another deep breath. It's time I chose the right side. After hanging up, Patricia spoke first. Is it always this hard? Standing up to family? Yes, I said honestly. But we're your family now, too. All of us. The day continued. More survivors, more stories, more healing. As evening fell, Marley found me sorting through letters from women who'd reached out since the gala. You okay? She asked. Better than okay. I held up a letter. This one's from a teenager whose mother left after seeing our story. They're safe now. That's what success looks like, she smiled. One family at a time. My phone buzzed. A text from Dwayne. Your little crusade cost me my partnership. I showed Marley, laughing. Karma's finally catching up. Speaking of karma, David appeared in the doorway. Tomorrow's headline, Society's Silent Epidemic. Former socialite mother exposes decades of cover-ups. Mother actually did it? He handed me the advance copy. Every detail, every name, every cover-up she witnessed. I looked around our office, at Patricia working with Rachel on her statement, at Sarah helping new arrivals, at the wall of photos showing survivors rebuilding their lives. You know what's funny? I said to Marley. They always said I'd destroy the family name, but really, I just gave it meaning. The sun set over the city as we worked late into the evening. More women arrived, each carrying their own golden cage stories, each finding strength in breaking their silence. Ready to head home? Marley asked eventually. I looked at Patricia, now sitting with other survivors, her posture already stronger. At Mother's statement, ready to shatter more carefully maintained facades. At the growing community of warriors who'd refused to stay silent. Actually, I smiled, I am home.